Today, we become legends.
Smite 2's open beta patch is just around the corner, and over the last couple of weeks we've seen a ton of what's going to be coming in the biggest patch the game has ever seen. I've made individual videos on a lot of these things, but this one will be more of a condensed recap of everything we've seen so far for patch OB1 that will be dropping in early January. So without further ado, let's jump in. First up, a brand new Smite 2 god in Aladdin will be joining the roster. He's a magical damage assassin with one of the most unique kits we've ever seen. His passive grants a lamp in his starting inventory that grants 17% of all stats of other items. You can activate the lamp to use your 3 wishes, which are usable only once per match, and provide a burst of gold, an instant cooldown reset on all abilities, items, and relics, and an instant respawn and speed boost when leaving the fountain. Aladdin also gains genie charges over time that can be used to refire his basic abilities for bonus effects. Aladdin's 1 summons glyphs that can be fired in a spread pattern if released early, or a single line if fully charged, and will deal damage. Using a genie charge to refire his 1 again will call the glyphs back to his location, dealing damage on the way back. Aladdin's 2 is a dash that damages and passes through enemies. Using a genie charge to fire the 2 again will call upon the genie to slam the ground 5 times in a small area around you, dealing high damage. Aladdin's 3 is a wall running dash that allows Aladdin to climb all walls and jump off at the time of his choosing or after the duration expires, dealing damage. Refiring with a genie charge will cause the landing hit to also knock up enemies. And finally, Aladdin's ultimate throws forward the lamp and brings you and the target hit into a separate arena, while the lamp is left behind on the battlefield and can be interacted with by other allies or enemies to join the fight in the lamp. Aladdin and the enemy hit will heal up to a certain percentage of their health, favoring Aladdin when the lamp hits, and inside the lamp both Aladdin and the enemy gain cooldown rates, once again favoring Aladdin, while only Aladdin gains protections in the lamp also, making the 1v1 fight created by this ability heavily favorable to Aladdin himself. It's not just Aladdin coming in this patch though, we're also getting Geb, Ullr, Mulan, and Agni ported over in OB1 with some +1 changes. Geb's passive now provides basic attack damage reduction in addition to the crit reduction he already had, and also caps damage from a single hit at 20% of his maximum health. Geb's stun shield ability will now also apply his passive to the ally while the shield holds. Geb can now also perform a small jump with his 1 if he's at maximum speed, which knocks up instead of away, and Geb will be entirely intelligent scaling in Smite 2. Ullr only got a couple of small changes where his 3 in both stances will leave behind the deployable that activates when switching to the other stance. The bow deployable creates a small slow area, and the axe deployable explodes, reducing enemy protections in a small area. Ullr is entirely strength scaling in Smite 2. Mulan got some changes to her ultimate, where if she has fully mastered a specific weapon, she gains a bonus effect when ulting. Mastered sword allows her to turn the initial dash slightly, mastered spear increases the enemy active cooldowns by 3 seconds on the hit of spear slam, and mastered bow increases the projectile speed of the bow shot. Mulan also now gains a consumable training banner every 3 minutes that she can place down, granting bonus XP gain to allies in the area and bonus movement speed when allies not in the area walk towards the training grounds. Mulan is entirely strength scaling in Smite 2, and she is now officially called Hua Mulan instead of just Mulan in Smite 2, and her default model is now the masked version, with the unmasked version from Smite 1 available as a free skin for those that want to use it. And finally, Agni will now gain all 3 charges of his ultimate immediately upon leveling it rather than having to wait, and his passive will now be permanently active for 10 seconds on getting a kill, granting its full benefit on every ability for that duration. Agni is entirely strength scaling in Smite 2. That's it for gods though. Next up, let's talk about a related system, aspects, which are being introduced as an optional toggle that changes the way certain abilities work for the god in question. These are intended to be playstyle shifts or even role shifts, and will give some benefit but also some drawbacks, so they aren't just strictly an upgraded version of the base kit. They're a shift towards a different playstyle, and you may want to use the base kit or the aspect depending on how you want to play. Like Athena's aspect for example, which makes her ultimate target enemies instead of allies but it deals no damage, or Thanatos' aspect, which takes away his healing on kills but instead grants permanent max health on kills and a % max health damage and heal on his 3, essentially turning him into a tank. I won't go over every aspect here, but I'll link a video that goes over them all in more detail. There are going to be 20 aspects in the open beta launch patch, but more will be added over time until every god has at least 1 aspect. Some gods may have multiple aspects where appropriate though. Next up is a new gameplay system that you might have already experienced if you've played Smite 2 recently, as it's being tested on the live client right now, and that's CC buffering. In short, CC buffering makes it so that if you are hard crowd controlled out of the startup animation of an ability, that ability will complete its cast while you are CC'd. The CC effects will still apply, so for example, if you're stunned, you won't be able to move, turn your camera, use relics or active items, etc., but the animation of your ability will complete and the ability ability will still come out. Previously, if you were CC'd in the pre-fire animation of an ability, it will cancel it entirely and refund the cooldown. That will be very different under the CC buffering system. As I said, this system is currently on live servers, so if you played Smite 2 in the last couple of weeks, you've probably experienced it. Notably, silences are the only hard CC that completely ignores buffering. If you're silenced during the pre-fire, it will work exactly like it did before, where it cancels the ability without taking the cooldown. Dashes are also excluded from this system and will be interruptible as normal, but jumps and teleports will be bufferable. Again, I'll link a more in-depth video on this system down below if you want a more comprehensive explanation, but let's move on. Next up, let's talk about the two new game modes coming to Smite 2 in open beta, those being Joust and Assault. Joust will be following the Season 3 Chinese Joust map layout for the most part, but with a completely new art style themed around Arthurian legend. Taking place on the castle battlements during a siege by Mordred, the gameplay should be very familiar if you played Joust and Smite 1 before. Single lane 3v3 with a small surrounding jungle area and a boss that is the Lost Knight instead of the Bull Demon King, to keep it in theme with the Arthurian design of Joust in Smite 2. Slaying the Lost Knight disables the frontmost enemy structure for a while, allowing you to push, very similar to BDK. The only major gameplay change are a patch of stealth grass in the corridor between the lane and the boss pit, as well as a teleporter that transports you from the red buff area to the boss pit and vice versa. One more notable change with Joust in Smite 2 is that there are no current plans to add a ranked Joust mode, but there may still be leaderboards within the same queue. Moving on to Assault though, which will unfortunately not have its own map for open beta, but will have one at some point fairly soon. This is just a temporary Assault rule set using a cut down version of Conquest while the team works on making a complete map for the mode. It contains the mid lane of Conquest only, with a small side area that houses a rotating interactable platform that can spawn various power-ups like the Queen Naga buff, the Fire Giant's Obsidian Dagger, the Pyromancer's Bomb, jungle buffs, and more. There will be a healing pod each behind your tier 1 tower, and of course, random gods with 1 reroll and no recalling to base for healing or buying items, the usual Assault stuff. Again, Assault will have its own dedicated map at some point fairly soon, but in the meantime, we have this Assault rule set to tide us over in open beta. Speaking of Conquest though, there's quite a few changes coming for open beta 1. First up, there are 2 new side harpy camps in the side jungles of duo and solo lane for both teams. These can provide extra farm during downtime between waves and extra reasons to pressure enemies under their tower, as these can of course be invaded to extend your lead. Next up, speed buff has been moved further back into your own half of the map, with the harpy camp replacing where speed buff used to be. There will also be a new Cyclops warrior camp in this area, which drops a consumable ward that can be placed down. Red buff has also been moved closer to mid lane for easier access for mid laners to pick it up, with another Cyclops warrior camp in a similar location to the one on duo lane side. In addition though, one of the back camps on this side is replaced by a Scorpion, which is harder to kill but drops a consumable that can be picked up, and when used, pings all enemy locations on the minimap but doesn't reveal them. They've also made various adjustments to the geometry of the jungle to make it easier to navigate by removing needless obstacles and making the flow a bit more obvious. There have also been small breakables added around the map, like the silver and gold jars around Gold Fury that you can hit or walk through to gain a small amount of gold. At Fire Giant, there are molten shards that you can do the same for and gain a small amount of permanent strength and intelligence, and finally, some small green wisps will roam the jungle and heal 10% max health when taken. Speaking of roaming the jungle, roaming harpies were also added around the harpy camps in both sides of the jungle for a bit of extra farm. The Fire Giant now drops the Obsidian Dagger on death, which can be picked up. When used, it deals 500 true damage to you, but grants a large damage increase and boost of attack speed for 6 seconds. If the 500 true damage would kill you, you instead become invulnerable and heal to full health over a few seconds. And finally for Conquest, jungle camps in general have been made a lot harder to kill for those without a jungle starter item. For junglers, there should only be a small difference, but for laning roles, it will be significantly harder to take jungle camps on your own in this patch compared to before, at least in the early game. Come late game, you should still be able to take them pretty easily though. Alright, moving on from Conquest though, let's talk about balance, new items, and item reworks coming in open beta. Quick mention here that we've only seen some of the balance changes coming in open beta, and there will be likely more changes made than just these ones that we haven't seen yet, and or even some of the changes here might be implemented differently. But this is what we've seen so far. First up, there's a buff round to most strength items in the game. It's been identified as underperforming compared to intelligence, so a slew of items have had their strength increased and or been buffed in other areas. Luxury items are being introduced. These are either new items or reworked versions of existing items that are extremely expensive but extremely powerful, and are meant as late game purchases to really push your build forward. For example, Avatar's Parashu and Dreamer's Idol, the active items that grant a % strength and int increase respectively, have been made to cost 3700 gold, but provide some of the highest raw power stats in the game, plus that active effect for even more power. Wish Granting Pearl now costs 3550 gold, but has the most amount of health on a single item in the entire game at 500, along with plenty of int and mana. Sphere of Negation is now 3250 gold, but that has 100 magical protections, once again an unheard of amount of stats to be on a single item, but at an absurd cost. A few more items are getting these kinds of changes, and there might be even more than they've revealed so far when the open beta patch drops in January, but this is the general idea of luxury items now. The strength and intelligence elixirs will also now stack, which is a similar change to luxury items, looking to address late game build stagnation. You can now buy as many of these 3k pots as you want and continue increasing your stats well past full build. Another key area that is addressed in OB1 is active items, for which many underused active items are getting buffs, such as Lifebinder's cooldown going from 30 seconds to 15, Jade Scepter reducing the strength and intelligence of the enemy's hit, Screeching Gargoyle reducing the protections of enemies hit, Phoenix Feather will now pulse out a ring of fire that deals 10% max health true damage to enemies hit, and others. There are also smaller balance changes as well, but for this video I just wanted to go over the main overarching changes coming in this update. I have a full video covering these balance changes in more detail if you're interested. I'll link that below. We're also getting 3 new items in OB1 with Dominance and Odysseus Bow both returning from Smite 1. That's the attack speed % pen item and the chain lightning every 4th basic attack item, while a completely new active item, Linnean Bow, is also coming, which fires a poison arrow on a 20-second cooldown that deals damage and inflicts 40% anti-heal on enemies hit. Moving on from balance and items though, another small but much welcomed feature coming in OB1 is text chat. This will likely be a more rudimentary approach at first, but will be built upon over time. In the beta launch patch, there will be pre-game, in-game, and post-game text chat, but no direct message or clan chat features yet. Another small addition is that with the game going free-to-play, there needs to be a way to unlock gods for free, and while we won't be getting a full-fledged earned currency system like Favor just yet, there will be level up rewards, one of which is a free god unlock token every time you level up for the first 50 levels, giving up to 50 free god unlocks, which is currently more than the roster size of Smite 2 if you exclude the free gods that are always there. So if you didn't buy a Founders Edition, you can still unlock every god for free in open beta. Alright, these next few things are not necessarily confirmed and we haven't seen them yet, but they come from answers to community questions on Titan Talk and are likely but not certain to be in the game for OB1. A new, more fleshed out death recap and T-screen is likely coming. Skins will start coming out more frequently with the launch of open beta as well, with a mix of classic Smite 1 skins available for 100% legacy gems if you have them, as well as completely new Smite 2 skins available with 50% legacy gems and 50% diamonds. A roadmap for what is coming after the launch of open beta will be showcased in a show at the Vegas LAN in January, so that's pretty exciting. More complex ported gods are also likely to show up after they reach 50 gods with the launch of beta. Some gods like Scylla and King Arthur, who are very popular and loved but require more technical work to get in, were put aside in order to reach 50 gods as fast as possible. Now we're there, we should see more of these complex gods make their way in. On that note, god ports will also slow down with the launch of beta as the team focuses on other aspects of the game now that the roster size is more adequate. Potential for a day-night cycle was discussed, probably tied to some kind of gameplay mechanic, but this is likely quite far down the line and not there for OB1. There's no immediate plans to ever port over Siege, Class, or Slash to Smite 2. They were simply too unpopular and far behind the main 4 modes we now have in Smite 2. There's also no immediate plans to add a clan system for Smite 2 either. For Assault, there is a plan to add a reroll bank system where if an ally rerolls a god you want, you can select that god for yourself. And finally, match of the day modes are currently being worked on, such as Omnipotence, and should come either in OB1 or shortly after. But that's everything that's coming in the open beta patch for Smite 2 and a couple of things that should come shortly after. Hopefully this recap has been helpful for you if you missed any of the news or just wanted a refresher. Which new feature are you most excited for? Let me know down below and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day and peace out, you nerds.